Hey Waffle Gang, I do hope you are well. My name is Mark and today we're checking out some more Reddit stories. And if you do love a Reddit story, why not consider hitting that like, subscribe, maybe that notification bell too. It would be super bloody cheeky of you. And let's crack on with today's first story. Much love, guys. Now today's first story comes from Ambitious Crow 44, who says, would I be the arsehole for going no contact with my brother after he took advantage of my wife's kindness for my surprise birthday dinner? I, 42 male, and my wife Tanya, 37 female, have had a few very busy years. A few weeks before I turned 40, one of our kids was born at home unexpectedly, and Tanya got really sick afterwards. So my 40th basically didn't happen. I was totally fine with it. Fast forward to this year, yesterday, Tanya wanted to make up for not having a 40th and planned a surprise birthday dinner at a really nice and expensive restaurant I love. She invited my entire family, parents, siblings, and all the nephews and nieces. A few days before the dinner, my mum texted Tanya and basically told her she should clarify that she, Tanya, is paying for everyone. Turns out my older brother Harris, 48 male, was on the fence about coming because money is tight for him. He originally thought it would just be him and his wife. The second Tanya sent a kind text saying she'd be covering the meal for everyone, Harris immediately expanded his group from 2 to 6 people. He added his 3 children, one of their significant others, and his adult son's girlfriend, without asking anyone. He just did it. Also, the night of the dinner, one of them decided not to come. He also didn't communicate this to Tanya. The day before the dinner, another sibling, Shane, 51 male, asked Harris if he was looking forward to it. Harris's response? Hell yeah, especially because we aren't paying. He openly admitted he only brought a bunch of extra adults because it was free. He didn't care that he was taking advantage of my wife's generosity and our finances. To him, it was just a free night out. During the dinner, I had no idea that she was paying until she got the bill and we went home. I had an absolutely wonderful time. On the way home, Tanya told me everything. The texts, the clarifying, the sudden shift, and then not asking if his son's girlfriend could come. This isn't the first time. For years, Harris has been disrespectful towards me. He barely has any relationship with our kids. He'll RSVP to their birthdays and then not show up. His wife says she's coming almost every time, but actually only appears when there's an expensive free meal involved. This was just the first time he directly used and disrespected my wife. After hearing all this, I told my wife, I'm done. I'm going no contact with Harris. I don't want him in our lives anymore if this is how he behaves the moment he sees an opportunity to get something for free. So, would I be the arsehole here for finally drawing the line in the sand, cutting him off and going no contact outside of holidays? Edit. For further clarification, the extra adults are my nephews that he wasn't bringing if he had to pay. They weren't the issue. He also added a nephew's girlfriend without asking and made those comments. That's what burns me, and it's taking advantage of my wife. Further slights towards me were years prior, which included but not limited to not inviting my family to a summer barbecue because someone else who isn't family was invited with their kids and then invited me the day of because that family backed out. I found out this event from my dad, who was just as upset as me about the situation. That's just the tip of the iceberg. Edit 2. Also during the dinner, there were 2 tables in the same private room but were separated by a fireplace that took up the middle of the room, making it so you'd have to go to the other table to talk and such. The table I wasn't sitting at that included Harris and his family. Never once did any of them get up to come over to our table, and yet I went to theirs several times to talk and enjoy their company. The more I analyze the dinner, the more I see how I'm valued by them. The level of self-unawareness by them is astounding. Now clearly it's not about the money in this situation. If Harris had turned around and said, money's tight, would it be okay if my kids came too since this is a family celebration? That'd be one thing, but openly joking, hell yeah, especially because we aren't paying, just makes it feel gross. And the fact that he's invited one of the adult son's girlfriends as well, without even asking, it's absolutely wild. But like we see in a lot of these stories, what really stands out is clearly this isn't an isolated incident. The skipped birthdays, the only showing up when there's something in it for them, the barbecue situation. The dinner just sounds like this is the moment that all the built up resentment finally bubbled to the top, right? And initially I was thinking no contact over this one dinner, would that actually make sense? But it's clearly not about just this one dinner, is it? But commenter says to OP, warn your parents about what has been happening and strongly suggest to them to ensure that their finances and estate is secure. OP responds saying I did this about 2 years ago due to other concerns. They added me as an executor of their will and made me their healthcare proxy a few years before that. Commenter says, why did your mum call T to clarify that she was paying for everything? Why didn't she warn you? Or was she in on the scam? OP says my mother took it upon herself to ensure they would come because he was concerned about the cost. I don't think it was malicious, it was just poor judgment. Commenter says you also need to tell your wife that you do support her, that if anyone is pushing boundaries she can say no and you will deal with it, or whatever is needed, that she would not let something like that happen again. Get revenge before no contact. OP responds saying I did this first. I told her I appreciated her and this was the final straw. Slights towards me I can handle, but doing something like this to the mother of my children, to the woman I love and would kill for, it's unforgivable. Commenter says not the arsehole. Sounds like you won't really have to do much to actually go no contact. Just stop inviting him to stuff since you know he probably won't come anyway. There's no need to tell him anything about it, and if anyone asks, that's your line. He never comes to these things, so I thought I'd save us both some time and stop inviting him. When he gets wind of this, he'll be mad because it makes him look bad. Don't take the bait. Just shrug and change the subject. Commenter quoting, he never comes to these things unless there is a free expensive dinner involved. OP replied saying, I should specify, she only comes to things when there's a free meal, meaning his wife. He shows up for some things. The commenter says, why did neither mother nor wife stop him from adding extra people on someone else's dime? OP says, so my wife was trying to be kind. She was understanding about the adult children, but adding the girlfriend after no response until he knew he wouldn't be paying was ridiculous. She was appalled when she realized it, then hearing about the comments was the cherry on top. The commenter says, is this the first time your mum has asked you or your wife to clarify who's paying? Is she an enabler of your brother's greedy behavior? I've seen this happen with my own family, and it doesn't end unless someone gets cut off 100%. OP says, this is the first time. I spoke to her today, discussed the situation with her, and she says she wishes she never asked T to because when she saw the number he said, she was afraid they were going to take advantage of it, and her suspicions were found to be true at the dinner. OP responds to a comment about his brother trying to leech off another family member. OP says, we'll see. The looming question for me is, when will he actually notice I no longer respond to texts? Him sending me reels or answering calls. I mentioned in another reply I work in medicine. I work in emergency medicine in a very busy place. You know when I hear from him, when his family needs to come see me, and I always ensure they get in and are taken care of by the best, even when I'm not there. When I don't answer or help, that's when the dominoes will fall and he'll blame me. The ego on a guy like him is beyond confounding. So OP came in with an update a week later and says, so a lot has happened since my original post. I've had numerous discussions with my wife, my oldest brother Shane, my dad, and my mum. There are a lot of deep conversations about the subject, pros and cons, and some serious soul searching. Harris, 48, the subject of the last post, has done some really messed up things this past year. No showing my oldest son's birthday, and then calling an hour late with some lame excuse, saying he and his wife were showing to my younger son's birthday, and he shows up acting like melancholy Mary while his wife skipped out to go to a casino. Remember the money issues? On a recent holiday, my pregnant wife was kneeling down with my kids, and he pulled her up and gave her a hug, which is very out of character for him. And my wife was like, what the fuck you doing? Mind you, he thinks he's God's gift to everyone around him. He showed up to my oldest son's basketball game when he was told when I wouldn't be there, to show up the next weekend and that it was going to be my wife there. There are many years of different things. Every conversation is somehow geared back towards himself. Mind you, his track record is very short and it's like he's always trying to compete with me. It's sad to be honest. Not once in my career, changing specialities or anything I did, he never once checked in with me. What I did when he changed jobs after 20 plus years at the same place. He gets angry when called out, so you cannot have any constructive conversation with him. He chooses friends over blood, the previous discussed cookout incident. He has a better relationship with one of my friend's kids I grew up with than mine. There's little to zero effort from them. I showed up to everything I was invited to before I had kids, and the only thing I didn't was because my family had COVID. Am I perfect? No. I have my faults, but I look back, and even when I rented an in-law basement apartment from him, I'd move in for a short time, 3 to 6 months, and each time he'd up the rent when he saw fit. Once because I had a girlfriend that would spend the night. No, she didn't shower or eat their food. of which I stopped staying with him in my off months of winter rental and swallowed my pride and stayed with my parents for 3 months and bought a house soon thereafter. The conversation with my mother was the most enlightening, saying he was the most self-unaware person. Mind you, she is his primary defender, but realized how bad this is. She was sad about the state of his and my relationship, but she understood due to all the slights and issues I've had with him. And when they brought up, he cannot handle talking about it if it's about him. Everything is an attack. No such thing as constructive criticism. Also, everyone else has contacted my wife or myself in one way or another and said thank you after the dinner. Not a single thing from that family. Not a word. Everyone is in agreement with my decision, which is low contact. My father has a condition and I don't want to miss any time with him for the kids and myself, especially holidays. Commenter says, it sounds like he's after your wife. Opie says, I felt off about the situation, but I didn't witness it. He waited until I walked away, which pisses me off even more. He called me at work when he was walking into the basketball game. I told him straight up I'm not there and I told you this wasn't the week to go. A commenter says, so you've not confronted him over his piss-taking bullshit or told him to pay you back? Opie said there's no reason to. As I said in my post, regardless of what is said to him, he doesn't listen and gets defensive. I called him out with the oddity stuff around my wife. He just got weirder. She dislikes him and I trust her, so I have no worries about that. I don't want any money. It's the principle of the constant oddities and disrespect. One more commenter says, give it up. You ain't going to get through to him. Live your life as happily as you can. Do not let him know when special events are coming up, such as birthdays, special dinners, games, nothing. Do not invite him to your house. You have tried hard. Move on. Opie replies saying I should specify low contact means holidays at my parents only. No invites to the kids stuff. No responses to calls or texts. I just don't get how someone can take advantage of someone's generosity like that. Turn up to this restaurant, sit there knowing you've brought a whole bunch of people with you that someone else is going to have to pay for. Thinking about being in that situation, sitting in that restaurant where that's going, I would be so anxious. I would want to shrivel up and die. But what do you guys make of this situation? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. Let's move on to another story. Now, we're going over a story that we've covered in the past. The cheese wheel story. I heard that there was a conclusion to it, so I just had to go over it once again. It's one that absolutely tickled me when it happened, but feel free to skip it if you don't want to see it again. Totally up to you. Timestamps are always down in the description, along the timeline below. It's from the Am I Overreacting subreddit from Gems138 and says, Am I overreacting? My girlfriend left me over a cheese wheel. I, 27 male, and my girlfriend, 26 female, were saving for a house down payment. I work and she is unemployed. Have saved $32,000 and she has saved $4,000, so I feel like I bear the brunt of the financial decision making here. I was doing the Oxford County Cheese Trail and I found a vault release. It was selling a 140-pound wheel of 21-year-old cheddar. It was aged using a traditional cloth-bound method that's practically extinct here in Canada, and with over 21 years, it is extremely concentrated. 21-year-old cheddar often sells for $120 a pound. The farm was selling the entire wheel for $18,500. If I cut it into 200-gram wedges and sell it at $60 each, I can make $38,000. I bought the cheese wheel and brought it home in my truck. When I rolled it into our apartment, at first, she was excited. When I started to explain the financials and investment potential, she turned sour. She didn't yell, but she expressed she wasn't happy about how I spent my share of our house savings. She is now staying with her parents. I think she's overreacting because she doesn't understand the Canadian housing market. Our savings is not enough for a down payment without a ridiculous mortgage, and we need to take these opportunities. Am I overreacting, or am I the only one with ambition in our relationship? TLDR, my girlfriend is staying with her parents because I spent my share of our savings on a cheese wheel, which can be cut into wedges and sold for a sizable profit. Thank you. That line I read, and I've read this story several times just to myself because I love it. The fact that he rolled this wheel of cheese into his apartment like some cartoon character. Can you just imagine that coming through the door? Hi honey, I'm home. She's like, what the fuck is that? But there was a bunch of comments from OP, which is probably going to make it 10 times worse. The first one says, I've got to figure out how to open this darn thing still. I forgot about that. I haven't figured out how to open it yet. It's covered in thick wax. It looks like a cannonball. I've tried using a hairdryer and a knife, but I can't get into it. It's not rind, it's paraffin wax. It's 21-year-old aged cheddar, so the wax is brittle and hard. The texture is like a cannonball, not the shape. This is a 21-year-old cheddar. It has a thick black wax and is hard with hairline fractures from the cheese expanding and contracting over 21 years. It is a heritage cheese, not some run-of-the-mill parmesan, you peasants. You didn't say the peasants bit. You are dividing the 140 pounds by 7 ounces, but you're forgetting that there are 16 ounces in a pound. So if you divide the 140 by 7, the 7 goes into 14 twice. OP also says, also the cheese will not spoil. After 21 years, all the moisture has been replaced by calcium lactate crystals. Once the wax seal is broken, I'll be putting it in my chest freezer. And you can't compare this heritage cheese to a grocery store commodity. The scarcity dictates the price. And one more from OP that says, she doesn't have any overheads because I pay the bills, hence why I feel it's acceptable for me to make financial decisions like investing in a high-yield assets like the traditional cloth-bound 21-year age Oxford Heritage Cheddar Wheel. Fuck's sake. So OP came in 6 days later and says, I've taken some of your feedback into consideration from my last post. For those curious, my girlfriend is no longer in the picture. She cracked due to her low risk tolerance, so I've decided to go all in on the business. I initially tried to return the wheel to the distributor to recoup some capital, thinking they'd have some pity. They were actually considering it until they came out to look at it in my truck. Apparently the minor heat damage I caused to the paraffin wax while trying to open last week compromised the wheel, which was already non-refundable in the first place. Since now I'm stuck with a £140, 30,000 plus asset, I had to pivot to asset protection and keep what I still have. I went out and bought a true TBB-2-HC 59-inch solid door back bar cooler, a professional digital temperature humidity controller, an industrial humidifier, a vacuum sealer, and ripening mats. Total cost was about 8.5k after taxes. Expensive, yes, but I wasn't going to let a 30,000 plus investment depreciate value. The delivery was difficult. My apartment door is narrow, so I had to take the door entirely off the hinges and shimmy the cooler into the living room. I had maybe a millimeter of clearance between the frame and the unit. I was exhausted and excited, so I started researching installation on my phone before putting my front door back on. That's when my landlord walked in. Apparently he believes my door being off the hinges somehow removes my reasonable right to privacy. We already have a strained relationship because of my own use of the unit. He still holds a grudge because I was doing some light metal fabrication with a consumer plasma cutter in my kitchen a few months ago. He saw the cooler, the vacuum sealer, and the wheel of heritage cheese and started crying about commercial operations and fire hazards. I told him very clearly, this cheese is for personal consumption. There is nothing in my lease that limits how much dairy a tenant can own. The next morning, I found an eviction notice in my mailbox. It's riddled with spelling errors as if it's written in a haste. I'm already preparing my defense for the landlord-tenant board. Am I overreacting? I'm being evicted over dietary preferences as far as the landlord is concerned, and I feel like this is an unlawful action. Edit. Added a plus to the valuation, as it is possible to increase my margins depending on the quantities I sell in. Also, please bear in mind that I have sold 0 cheese, so I feel like this is premature action. Thank you. So OP did give us some pictures of the cheese to prove he's got it, and a couple of various other pictures as well. What really got to me in this is the way that the girlfriend just disappears at the story. Like, it must have been absolutely heartbreaking for her, but for him, she said it's me or the cheese, and this man went, I'm keeping the £140 cheese orb. Not even a paragraph mourning the relationship either, just she's no longer in the picture anyway, and I've invested an additional 8.5k into this cheese infrastructure. What the fuck's going on? So another YouTube channel / podcast, Two Hot Takes, Morgan from there sent OP a request to actually buy some of the cheese, and he did respond to it, saying, unfortunately, the cheese wheel endeavor has come to an end. It is in the process of being incinerated due to an act of sabotage. I did not respond to your initial message as I could not sell to USA, but I did manage to make significant sales before I was crushed by government bureaucracy. I had a quick look on the account as well, and OP was comment on an exercise forum and giving some advice on there, and all the responses were like, "You selling any cheese, mate?" I was just like, oh no, just abandon that account and move on, please. Holy moly. I'm shocked that he actually did make some sales somewhere along the line though. Somewhere out there in Canada, there are random people unknowingly eating slices from the most catastrophic financial decision ever documented on Reddit. Madness. But I'm glad the story did come to a conclusion in the end. And I am sorry about the cheese. But what do you guys make of this situation? Did it end how you expected it to? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. And let's move on to another story. Now our next story comes from a throwaway account and says, "My 33 female roommate's 29 female dog is literally killing me. I have allergies and asthma to animals. Dog allergies weren't that bad in the past. I asked her previously, no animals. The company who leases property has that rule as well, but she brought a dog anyway. For the sake of not starting fights, I didn't say anything. My allergies and asthma have escalated to me having to be on steroids every couple of months for the past year. It's gotten so bad that my doctor told me that something now or something dangerous can happen. The roommate now has been asked to leave by the landlord by March 30th. They signed a contract saying she would do so. Now it's looked like she isn't going to do that or wait until the last minute. She's also been fired from the job that gives us this housing. I'm dreading this conversation, and I know it's going to be ugly. She has flat out refused to follow any of the rules the company had regarding the dog and controlling the environment either. She was already higher up, so they didn't kick her out right away. My family lives far away and I have nowhere else to go. I'm thinking of bringing this to the company heads. Rules are obviously not being enforced and I could die as a result. What should I do?" A commenter quoted OP saying, "For the sake of not starting fights, I just didn't say anything," and then says, "You need to stop being a doormat and start advocating for yourself. They broke your agreement and contravened the lease. They don't get to be treated with kid gloves. They get told to get rid of the dog and/or get the fuck out. Stand up for yourself. This is, as you say, literally killing you. Don't commit suicide by being polite, least of all to people who don't deserve it." And I think that comment pretty much said it all. I pretty much had the same reaction. When OP said, "For the sake of not starting fights, I just didn't say anything," and I was like, that's a mistake in itself, but I know it's difficult for some people. But it was 3 weeks later that OP did update the post and says, "Thank you everyone so much for your advice. It gave me the confidence boost I needed to go to the higher ups. My roommate's behavior had progressively gotten worse after posting. She had stopped bathing the dog to protest being fired and kicked out. Also a fuck you to my allergies. She had stopped sorting recycling and started throwing trash away in the recycling bins, taking other people's food and several other things that just make you say, what the fuck? I knew after seeing what you guys were saying and seeing that behavior from her, I had to speak up and be so loud that no one could ignore me. I also knew I had to make the hard choice of resigning and moving back home if the company wasn't going to take my worries seriously. Since it is company housing, I demanded a hearing with the company heads and the landlord. I took my visit summaries from doctor's appointments and told them how this needs to stop and the move-out date needed to be sooner. If that didn't happen, I would be forced to resign. They were appalled and they wish I would have spoken up sooner. A mistake I will never make again. They made up a new contract they made us sign, pushing the move-out date to January 25th. They also stripped her of some company items, phone and computer that they were going to let her previously keep. She's going to be banned from company property as well after that date. In addition to all of this, the company will be reimbursing me for any medical bills I have because of the dog allergies. I think this is the best outcome I could have gotten realistically. Thank you guys once again. Edit to add, they're hiring professional cleaners and someone to clean out the HVAC vents after January 25th. Also, if the roommate is still here after that date, the company told me they will have locks changed and police escort them out if needed. There's no wiggle room with this new contract. Now, I shouldn't be shocked with this kind of behavior. We've covered a lot of stories with all kinds of wild ass behavior, but she stopped bathing the dog to protest being fired, and that's some genuinely unhinged behavior. At that point, it stopped being a roommate conflict and we're straight into, actively making someone medically worse out of spite. And I'm glad that OP did eventually speak up, because it was wild that OP was on steroids every couple of months and still was worrying more about starting fights than their own health. Meanwhile, this roommate was just taking the piss, violating the lease, ignoring medical issues, stealing food, sabotaging recycling, and just making OP ill. Someone like that doesn't deserve your time or respect. They got none for you, so why should you be giving it back? But what do you guys make of this situation? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. Now, just a huge thank you from the bottom of my heart for getting involved in today's stories. Your love, your support, your time, it always means the absolute world to me. So thank you so much for being involved. Truly, it is absolutely amazing. I'm forever thankful, and I will see you in the next one. Take care and much love.